The moments I knew my mother-in-law had stopped seeing my house as my house was the morning my kitchen disappeared. Not literally, of course, but when I walked downstairs that Saturday morning, coffee already on my mind, something felt wrong immediately. The shelves looked different. The colors were different. The room didn't feel like the warm, slightly messy kitchen Eric and I had built together over the past year. It felt staged. I opened the cabinet where my favorite blue coffee mugs always sat. Empty. I frowned and checked the next shelf. Still empty. Then I noticed what had replaced them. 3 delicate floral teacups with gold rims I recognized instantly. Marilyn's. My stomach dropped. I slowly turned around, scanning the kitchen. The lemon-patterned towels I loved were gone. The little wooden sign above the sink that said, "Home is our happy place," had disappeared. Even the fruit bowl Eric and I bought at a flea market on our anniversary was missing. And that's when I heard her voice. "You're finally awake." I walked toward the dining room and stopped in the doorway. My mother-in-law, Marilyn, was standing on one of my dining chairs, adjusting the curtain rod like she was in the middle of redecorating her own home. Except the curtains she was hanging weren't mine. Mine had been light and airy. These were thick burgundy drapes that made the room look like a Victorian funeral parlor. "Marilyn," I said slowly, "what are you doing?" She stepped down from the chair and brushed off her hands proudly. "Fixing things." "Fixing things?" I repeated. She glanced around the room with satisfaction. "Honestly, Claire, you should thank me. This room was freezing before. These colors are much warmer." For a second, I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for the moment she'd laugh and say she was joking. She didn't. "You changed my kitchen," I said. "You replaced my curtains without asking me." She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be so territorial. This is a family home." A family home. Not my home. Not the house Eric and I saved 3 years for. Not the place we painted together every weekend after work. Not the kitchen where we ate pizza on the floor the night we moved in because our table hadn't arrived yet. Apparently, in Marilyn's mind, it was hers to improve. "How did you even get in?" I asked. She gave me a small, satisfied smile. "Eric gave me a spare key months ago." For a moment, the room went completely quiet. I pulled out my phone and texted my husband immediately. "Did you give your mother a key without telling me?" The typing bubbles appeared almost instantly. "Yes, for emergencies. Why?" I looked up at Marilyn, who had already turned back to adjusting the curtains. I typed again. "She's redecorating our house right now." A minute passed. Then Eric called. I answered immediately. "Claire," he said, already sounding tired, "what's going on?" "What's going on?" I repeated. "Your mother let herself into our house and started replacing my things." "It's not replacing," he said quickly. "She's just helping a little." Helping? Marilyn glanced over at me, clearly hearing him through the phone, and smiled. That was the moment something inside me shifted, because this wasn't about curtains or mugs. This was about control. Marilyn believed this house belonged to her family, and that I was just a temporary decoration inside it. And Eric was letting her believe that. I lowered the phone slowly and looked around the room she had already started changing. Then I looked back at her. For the first time since I married her son, I stopped thinking about keeping the peace, because if Marilyn thought she could walk into my home and take over, she had no idea what I was about to do next. By the time Eric came home that evening, half my house looked like it belonged to someone else. The burgundy curtains were up, my lemon kitchen towels had vanished. Even the throw pillows from the living room sofa had been replaced with stiff, embroidered ones that screamed Marilyn. And the worst part? Marilyn was still there. She sat at the dining table sipping tea from one of those gold-rimmed cups like she owned the place. "Oh, good," she said when Eric walked in behind me. "You're home. Tell your wife she's overreacting." Eric dropped his keys on the counter and looked around the room slowly. I watched his face carefully, hoping just once he'd see what I saw. "Mom, what did you do?" he asked. Marilyn looked offended. "I improved things." Eric rubbed the back of his neck, already stressed. "Claire likes how the house was." "Liked," Marilyn corrected. "Past tense." I crossed my arms. "You took my things out of the kitchen." "They're not gone," she said calmly. "They're in a box in the garage." "A box." My jaw tightened. "So you packed up my stuff in my own house?" She shrugged. "You'll get over it." Eric sighed. "Mom, maybe you should have asked first." That was it. That was the big defense. "Maybe you should have asked." Marilyn didn't even look bothered. "Oh, please," she said. "You grew up in a home with taste. You know this place needed help." I waited. I waited for Eric to say something stronger, to tell her to put everything back, to remind her that this wasn't her house. But he didn't. He just stood there, stuck between us, clearly wishing the whole situation would magically disappear. And in that moment, I understood something important. If I wanted this to stop, I was going to have to stop it myself. Marilyn stood and walked toward the living room, gesturing around proudly. "I was actually thinking we should repaint this wall," she said. "A warmer tone would—" "No." She turned slowly. Eric looked at me like he hadn't heard me right. "No?" Marilyn repeated. "No," I said calmly. "You're done." The room went quiet. Marilyn laughed softly like I'd just told a cute joke. "Oh, Claire," she said, "you're acting like you have authority here." I stepped closer. "This is my house." "It's my son's house," she replied instantly. There it was again. Not ours, his. And that told me everything. I looked at Eric. "Did you know she was coming today?" He hesitated. Just for a second. But that second was enough. "I mentioned she could stop by," he admitted, "but I didn't know she was going to do all this." Marilyn didn't even deny it. She needed help, clearly. Something cold settled in my chest, because suddenly this wasn't just about Marilyn. Eric had opened the door for her, literally. I walked past them both and grabbed my purse from the counter. "Where are you going?" Eric asked. "Out." "Claire, I just need some air." That part wasn't a lie. But what I didn't say was that my mind was already racing, because Marilyn thought she could walk into my home and take control. She thought I'd argue, cry, maybe complain, but eventually accept it. She thought I'd play nice. But as I drove away from the house that night, one thought kept repeating in my head. Fine. If she wanted control so badly, I was about to give her something she never expected. And by the time I was finished, Marilyn would never feel comfortable walking into my house again. Not ever. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I parked outside a small coffee shop a few blocks away and just sat in the car, staring at the steering wheel while my thoughts raced. The fight replayed in my head over and over. Marilyn's smug smile, Eric's hesitation. The word that kept echoing louder than anything else was one simple sentence she'd said. "It's my son's house, not ours, his." And apparently, Eric wasn't in any hurry to correct her. After 20 minutes, I finally grabbed my phone and called someone I hadn't expected to call that night. "Claire?" my sister Lily answered. "Everything okay?" I let out a long breath. "Do you remember when you told me I should set boundaries with Marilyn?" Lily laughed dryly. "Which time? I've been saying that since your wedding." "Well," I said, staring out the windshield, "she redecorated my house today." There was a long pause. "She what?" "She let herself in with the spare key Eric gave her and started replacing my stuff." Another pause. Then Lily said the one thing I wasn't expecting. "Claire, check your garage." "What?" Just trust me. Go check your garage." Her tone made my stomach twist. "Why?" I asked. "Because if Marilyn packed up your kitchen today," Lily said slowly, "I'm willing to bet it wasn't the first time she's moved things around." Something about the way she said it made a chill run down my spine. I hung up and drove home. The house was quiet when I walked inside. Too quiet. Marilyn's car was gone. Eric was upstairs in the shower. Perfect. I walked straight through the kitchen and opened the door leading to the garage. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, just storage bins, holiday decorations, Eric's tools. Then I noticed 3 cardboard boxes stacked in the corner. Each one had thick black marker writing across the side. Kitchen items. My stomach dropped. I walked over and opened the first box. Inside were my mugs, not just the ones missing from today, all of them. I opened the second box, my lemon towels, my wooden sign, my fruit bowl. The third box made my chest tighten. It wasn't kitchen stuff. It was decorations from the rest of the house. Picture frames, candles, the small lamp from the reading corner Eric and I set up in the living room. This hadn't been a spontaneous visit. Marilyn had been slowly replacing pieces of my home for weeks, and Eric had to know. The door from the house opened behind me. "Claire?" Eric said. "What are you doing in the garage?" I turned slowly. "Did you know about these?" He followed my gaze to the boxes. For a moment, he said nothing. That was all the answer I needed. "Claire," he started. "You knew," I said quietly. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it." He sighed. "Mom just thought the house could look nicer. Nicer. So my things had been quietly disappearing one box at a time. And you were fine with that?" I asked. "She wasn't throwing anything away." I stared at him in disbelief. "That's your defense?" He rubbed his temples. "Why are you making this such a huge deal?" That question hit harder than anything Marilyn had said all day, because suddenly the truth became painfully clear. I wasn't fighting just one person. I was fighting 2. And in this house, I was the only one who didn't have backup. I looked down at the boxes again. Then a strange calm settled over me. "Okay," I said. Eric frowned. "Okay?" "Okay." I closed the box slowly and walked past him toward the door. "Claire, what does that mean?" I stopped at the doorway and looked back at him. "It means," I said calmly, "your mother wants control of this house so badly." I gave a small, quiet smile. "She can have it." Eric's face filled with confusion. But what he didn't realize yet was that I had come up with a plan that would shock both of them. And by the time they understood what I'd done, it would already be too late. For the next 2 days, I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I didn't even bring up Marilyn. And that confused Eric more than any fight ever could. On Sunday morning, he watched me quietly drink my coffee from one of Marilyn's gold-rimmed teacups. "You're okay with all this now?" he asked carefully. I shrugged. "Your mom wanted the house to look nicer, right?" He blinked, surprised. "Yeah, I guess." "Then I guess she knows best." Eric looked relieved, which told me everything I needed to know. The truth was, I had already started my plan the night I found those boxes in the garage. And step 1 was simple. Let them think they'd won. Later that afternoon, Marilyn stopped by again. Of course she did. Once someone feels comfortable crossing a boundary, they rarely stop. She walked into the living room like she owned the property. "Well," she said, scanning the room, "at least you didn't change everything back." I smiled politely. "No reason to," I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. She hadn't expected that. Eric was sitting on the couch, clearly hoping the peace would last. Marilyn slowly walked around the room, inspecting things like a real estate agent. "You know," she said, pointing toward the wall, "that corner would look lovely with a cabinet. I have one at my house that would fit perfectly." "That sounds nice," I replied calmly. Eric's head snapped toward me. Marilyn smiled, clearly pleased with herself. "See?" she said to Eric. "She's finally learning." Learning? I nodded thoughtfully. "Actually, that reminds me. I made a call yesterday." "Oh?" she said. "Yeah. Since you've been helping so much with the house, I figured we should make things easier." Eric frowned. "What do you mean?" "I arranged something that will make everyone more comfortable." Marilyn folded her arms with interest. "Well, that sounds sensible." I stood up and walked to the kitchen counter where a small folder was sitting. Inside were several printed papers. I slid them across the table. Eric leaned forward first. Marilyn followed. The silence that followed was immediate. Eric looked up at me. "Claire, what is this?" "Documents," I said calmly. Marilyn's eyes moved quickly across the page. Then she froze. "What?" Eric asked, confused. She slowly looked up at me, her face tightening. "You're joking." I tilted my head. "No." Eric grabbed the paper from her and started reading. Then his face drained of color. "Claire, you can't be serious." I folded my arms. "Oh, I'm very serious." Because the document sitting on that table said something neither of them had expected to see. A temporary rental agreement. For this house. Marilyn's voice turned sharp. "You're renting the house?" "Exactly." Eric stared at me. "To who?" I smiled. "To your mother." Both of them spoke at once. "What?" "You said this house is your son's house," I said calmly, looking directly at Marilyn. "Well, now it can be." I tapped the paper. "But if you want to run it, decorate it, control it," I leaned back in my chair, "you'll have to pay for it." Marilyn looked like someone had slapped her. Eric looked like the ground had disappeared beneath him. And for the first time since Marilyn started invading my home, I was the calmest person in the room. But what neither of them understood yet was that the final part of my plan was still coming. And when it did, Marilyn would realize something that would completely wipe that smug smile off her face. For a long moment, no one spoke. Eric was still staring at the rental agreement like it might suddenly disappear if he blinked enough times. Marilyn's face had turned a shade of red I'd never seen before. "You can't do this," she finally said, her voice tight. "Why not?" I asked calmly. "This is Eric's house." I tilted my head slightly. "Actually, Marilyn, it isn't." Eric looked up sharply. "What?" I slid one more paper across the table. "This is the deed." He picked it up with shaky hands. I watched the realization slowly crawl across his face. Because when Eric and I bought the house, something very important had happened during the closing process, something he'd barely paid attention to at the time. The house had been purchased with my inheritance money from my grandmother, and because of that, the property had been legally registered in my name only. Eric read the paper again, slower this time. "Claire," he whispered. Marilyn leaned over his shoulder, trying to see. Then her expression changed completely. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Eric is your husband." "Yes," I said calmly, "and I invited him to live here with me." Eric looked like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water over his head. You never said it was only in your name." "You never asked," I replied. The room went silent again. Then Marilyn slammed her hand on the table. "This is manipulative." I laughed softly. "No, Marilyn, walking into someone else's house and replacing their belongings is manipulative." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. So I continued. "You spent weeks slowly packing up my things," I said. "You treated my home like it was yours, and Eric let you." Eric rubbed his face with both hands. "I didn't think it was this serious," he muttered. "That's the problem," I said quietly. "You never did." Marilyn crossed her arms. "Well, I'm certainly not paying rent." "That's fine," I said. I stood up and calmly gathered the papers from the table, because the rent agreement had never been the real point. The message was. I looked directly at Marilyn. "Then you won't be redecorating anything either." Her lips tightened. And if you come into this house again without asking, I added, I'll change the locks and treat it as trespassing. Eric's head snapped up. Claire, I'm not asking for a fight, I said calmly. I'm asking for respect. The room stayed quiet. For the first time since I'd met her, Marilyn had absolutely nothing to say. She grabbed her purse and stood abruptly. This conversation isn't over. I gave a small smile. It actually is. She stormed toward the door without another word. The moment it slammed shut behind her, Eric sank into a chair. I didn't realize how far she'd gone, he said quietly. You didn't want to see it, I replied. He looked up at me. And now? I thought about that for a moment. That depends, I said. Are you my partner or your mother's assistant? He didn't answer right away, and honestly, that was fine, because for the first time since Marilyn walked into my life, the power in this house had finally shifted, and whether Eric realized it or not, things were never going back to the way they were.